Friends compare and overshare. Advisors ask and stay on task.
Welcome to Your Intended Message, the perfect place for leaders and promising professionals who want to convey the intended message for greater success. Every week, we interview experts who address the challenges and best practices to deliver your message effectively. That might be one-to-one, one-to-few, or one-to-many. And perhaps the most important conversation, one-to-self. I'm your host, George Torok. My guest today is Jeff Mowatt. Here's 3 facts I believe you should know about Jeff. 1, he is a customer experience strategist. 2, he is a Hall of Fame business speaker, and he earned that designation from the Canadian Association of Professional Speakers. And 3rd, we know that he tells the truth because he admits that he is a mediocre golfer.
At best, George, at best.
At best.
Actually, that's a lie. Lousy is probably true.
Mediocre is too big of a description.
Stretching it, yeah.
Jeff Mowatt, welcome to Your Intended Message.
It is a pleasure, George. Gosh, I've known you for, probably over 20 years in the business world and as you as a thought leader out there. So when you contacted me about being on your podcast, I was thrilled, didn't hesitate, happy to work with you. You've got a really strong reputation out there. So yeah, happy to work with you.
Thank you, Jeff. I'm delighted to work with you as well. And when it comes to customer service, the customer service experience, you're the one that comes to mind, number one. And in fact, I can't think of anyone else who comes to mind. You label yourself as a customer experience strategist. What's going on in the customer experience that you help your clients with?
Well, I guess, George, if we were to narrow it down to just sort of a few words, would be that we help to have people narrow down their words and isolate the words to enhance trust and differentiate their service to make price less relevant. Now, that's kind of a mouthful, but the whole idea is just choosing a few words differently so that we build and earn people's trust. And once we have their trust, our prices are not as relevant. People understand that we're giving value. So that's essentially what I help companies and individuals do with their companies and their organizations.
What I find curious and what fits certainly with the theme of the program is the importance of the message that you intend to say. And you identified that the words you use help build trust. Give us an example of a couple mistakes that people use, customer service people might use that destroy trust. What are the wrong words?
Sure. I'll be happy to. The first ones that come to mind are calm down. That would
calm down.
You're upset. Calm down. Don't tell me how to feel. As opposed to I understand you're frustrated. I would feel similar, and we've had other people feeling the same way. So that's one example. Just in terms of when you mentioned, George, the name of this program, Your Intended Message, I love that because a lot of people have, I think most of us have good intentions when it comes to communicating. The challenge is sometimes the words that we choose undermine our good intentions. So we want to have friendly relationships with people and we want people to like us. I mean, that's a reasonable intention to have. The problem is because we tend to think of us being liked as being paramount, we don't realize that trust is even more important. So I'll give you an example. Let's say that, George, you asked me a question to which I don't have a response. So you asked me, when will my order be shipped? And my response is, wow, this time of the year, we're really busy. We're in back order. So, generally speaking, It's usually about 10 days, but I would guess about 2 weeks. Okay, so all of those things that I just said to you are accurate, they're fair and well intended, but the problem was the way I worded it, it sounded like I was equivocating. And so let's compare that to this response to the same question. So George, again, you asked me, when will my shipment be there? My response is about 2 weeks. Generally this time of year, we're on back order, so normally it's 7 to 10 days, but in your case, this time of year, it's about 2 weeks. Now the difference was we give exactly the same information, but in the first example, I analyzed and I explained and explained, and I didn't answer the question until the very end, about 2 weeks. In the second example, we answered the question directly, and then we explained. So when's my shipment due? About 2 weeks. And then you do the explanation.
Now, Jeff, I'm curious about the concept of being friendly, providing friendly customer service. And some customer service providers seem to think that that's their goal. And, you know, sometimes it just kind of annoys me. They're over the top. And I'll give you one example where, and I can't remember where it was, but I remember the conversation. Isn't that funny? The person said, you know, good morning, how are you today? And I said, I'm okay. And the person says, no, you should be wonderful. It's a beautiful day. I said, wow. I'm okay.
Yeah,
I'm getting less than okay. Now,
well, yeah, that's a great example. And in fact, you know, that's a big determinant between how we might grow a relationship. So if our intention is we want to become the customer's best friend, I think we're setting ourselves up for failure. People may not like us for a lot of reasons beyond our control. I mean, they may not like us because of our gender, our ethnic background, our height. I don't know, our name. Our name reminds them of somebody that they didn't like back in elementary school. I mean, who knows these things? So trying to be somebody's friend, you know, that's an organic, natural thing. It's going to happen or not. However, I really encourage my clients and the folks who are attending my seminars to have the goal, rather than focus on trying to be somebody's friend, let's focus on trying to become somebody's trusted advisor. And when you think about it, you know, a trusted advisor, my accountant, for example, I see him, Hazim, I see Hazim maybe once or twice a year. You know, we don't have a lot in common, but I mean, I spend thousands of dollars every year between our personal and corporate taxes with this guy. And I don't plan on going to movies with him or anything like that, but I want him to help me with tax planning. And that's what I'm looking for. And so that, which begs the question to your example, George, about somebody commenting and saying, no, you shouldn't be okay. You should be fantastic. To me, one of the biggest determiners of whether somebody is seen as a friend or a trusted advisor comes down to the way that we listen. Now, I expect that we all think we're good listeners, but somebody who is a good listener doesn't just listen with the idea of what we have in common. It's really listening to find the underlying need beneath that. So, for example, when somebody says we're okay, you know, we could say, oh yeah, you know, me too, I'm not very good. Well, you know, it's not about them and us. It's not about our feelings. In fact, I wrote a little poem. I don't write very much poetry. In fact, this is probably the only thing, but I mentioned that friends compare and overshare, advisors ask and stay on task. So for example, when you ask somebody, so what movies do you like? And their response is, oh, I saw such and such a movie. Oh, really? I saw that movie. We tend to look for commonalities because we're trying to be friends. Whereas as an advisor would ask, oh, really? You went to that movie? Really? Why that movie? What do you like about those movies? And they find out a lot more. So to your example, George, about somebody going, you're okay. Oh, why are you okay? I could be something else. Well, you should be happy or you should be delighted. Okay. Yeah, really? What's going on? Now you're going to have a lot better response than the trite responses of let's just be cheerful and over the top, which loses trust. And I know that this goes to both folks in Canada and the US and probably around the world, George, your intended message. I think for most people, when they reach a certain level of maturity, they're put off by people who are artificially happy, so to speak. We want somebody who's authentic, somebody who's real. And so the big way of determining that is how they listen to us. That's how we really start judging folks.
I find an interesting parallel there with social media. For example, on social media, people get all excited when they get likes on their post. And the real issue is, but have they built a relationship with anyone? Have they built trust, or
Right.
have they just got likes?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great point, George, because what difference does it make how many friends, quote unquote, friends we have if we don't really have anybody wanting to do real business with us, or if we're getting, I think of the viral videos that have had millions and millions of likes because it's a dog that does something or whatever. And not that the person posted for that purpose, but for those folks who are trying to build a business and be seen, be more visible, and all they're doing is entertaining folks, that's not necessarily what I think we're looking for. And actually now, George, I'm going back to one of your best tips that I've ever got was one of your books, and I think it was Secrets of Power Marketing. That was one of your first ones you did with Peter Erzbender? Yeah, and actually, I do have a commerce degree with master in marketing, so I have a background in marketing. The best definition of marketing I ever read, excuse me, was yours. And that was that the purpose of marketing is two things. It's to convey value and create awareness. So a lot of folks are creating awareness out there, but they're not really conveying any value. And so I think when it comes to social media likes and all that kind of stuff, are you really conveying enough value that people are compelled enough to want to do business with us? And that comes down to, are we really connecting with them on about what's important to them and what's going to move them? So you raise really good points. Social media, it can be a powerful purveyor of your message out there, but not if we're just promoting ourselves or talking about movies trips we went on. In fact, I think in many cases it creates resentment because it looks like you were out for dinner the other night and you went there, I didn't go there, and so in some ways it can create some degree of disconnection. So a certain irony that we're seeing out there. Which brings me to, the big thing around creating trust. And this is one thing that I've always found about you, George, in the many years that I've known about you. There's no BS with you. When you and I talk, you tell me what's really happening out there. And so it's one of the reasons I'm happy to work with you on these types of exchanges. And so people want to hear the truth. They want to know things that aren't going well. An example. Here's an example. I heard a politician interviewed on the radio, and it was about some civil subject that was going on out there. And the interviewer asked the mayor of the city, so what do you think of such and such? And the mayor said, and it had to do with, I think, drilling of gas wells around the city perimeter. And the mayor's response was, I don't profess to be an expert in what's happening in the petroleum industry in Canada. What I do know is when it comes to the needs of our citizens, boom. And so that to me, and I thought, ooh, that's pretty good. So often a way of building trust, ironically, is to be transparently honest about what you don't know. So to say, hey, I'm not an expert. It's kind of like, hey, I may just be a country boy from Cowtown, Canada. But what I do know, and it's funny how that admitting what you don't know makes people much more receptive to what you do know, which I find that fascinating. It's a great, I think, style to bring to.
Now, what I notice in that phrase, and what I don't know, I'm not an expert on, but what I do know is I believe what that does is it reveals that
you are not putting yourself on a pedestal. You are not saying, hey, I'm perfect, just listen to me, I know what I'm doing. Like,
Yeah.
you're questioning me.
Yeah. Well, and it takes confidence to do that too. And being somewhat secure of yourself. I'm often reminded of the Volkswagen Beetle when they came back and revived it, I think in the 2000s, somewhere along the lines. They came back, and when they put the new Beetle on their ads, it said, "Yes, it's back, and this time it's got some heat," kind of thing. and and they just made such fun of themselves that there's increasingly we're responding to that because we're so used to people. Well, the marketing term, this, George, is puffery. It's that slight exaggeration that we do. Oh, it's fabulous. It's awesome. And that type of language is so overused. It's overused all the time, 1,000,000%. We exaggerate, we do it a lot. And so that's why I think when it comes to your intended message for all of us, if we can just scale back the over the top language, if rather than saying, oh, you'll love this, I think you're going to like this. And it's subtle, but it's much more powerful because we have this internal dialogue going on with all of us all the time. There's kind of I mentioned it before. I don't mean to be crude, but there's kind of this BS detector that's going on here. And when we use words like everybody loves this, somebody internally we're going, no, I don't love it. A lot of people like it, but if we say a lot of people like this, you can't really argue with that. And so when we're communicating, if we can use terms that people can't really argue with, even internally, they're going to go along with us in this little journey of influencing folks. So, which makes it so important. Again, it's about trust, not about being liked or being admired by folks. And ironically, we are more liked and more admired when we do use understatement to a certain degree. So I find that fascinating.
Now, interesting. What I noticed there is the use of absolutes. Almost always, not always, almost always destroys trust, because how could that? How could that be? I see this all the time. What does that mean?
Well, that's right. And they are cliches, and the use of cliches, I understand because we don't want to be over the top. I just used an example, right? And people can relate to them in a hurry. I think the question that we might want to ask ourselves is, are we using cliches that are serving us well, or are they actually undermining our credibility? I think we want to be careful about words that are just so overused. The awesome, awesome. If I hear something's awesome, and think of another word, especially if you are having a conversation with a customer or putting a pitch anywhere. Those word choices make such a difference. Actually, George, I have another one for you that I got from you. And because we're talking about word choices, and this comes down to one syllable that can make a big difference. And I picked this up from you because I was reading one of your tips that you were sending out by email. And I think at the end of it, in fact, I just, ironically, I just put this in my tip that I sent out today off of jeffmowatt.com, off of our website. And you added this one little phrase at the end of your tip. And it was, you asked the question, was this helpful? And I found myself answering after reading your tip. Yeah. In fact, I remember emailing you back going, hey, George, that was really good. And it compelled me to do that. Now, that brings us to those little words that we put even in our emails. And so we could have a whole conversation just around email conversations and online conversations, but just a couple things that I remind our clients to do in our seminars when it comes to email communications. We're getting more of these inquiries, is when we're sending emails, first of all, make sure you have a full signature line there with how people can reach you, with your phone number, your title, your address, if you have it. I think we hide that way too often, and it makes it look like we are hiding something. So a full signature line. But again, getting back to your great tip that you put out several years ago, George, that helpful. You know, if we at the end of giving people information, if we say, I hope that helped, well, to say that helped is an action happening in the past. They're thinking about that action. Yes, that action helped. Well, actually, we want people thinking about us as trusted advisors. So if you say, I hope that was helpful, they're thinking it's an adjective refers to the person. Yes, she was helpful. He was helpful. That's who we want to be remember ourselves again as that trusted advisor. So instead of saying, I hope that helped, I hope that was helpful. Change one syllable, notches up the trust scale. Isn't that bizarre?
That's strange, and interesting as you dissect helpful. I'm noticing that the word helpful also suggests that it's still part of an ongoing process.
Yes, exactly. It's helpful. We're here. George is a helpful guy. That really makes a difference. And what we're doing, this is all that we're doing, George, is wordsmithing, and we are spinning. Politicians hire spin doctors for a reason. And one of which, and I think anybody can do this, and I certainly share this in our customer service training sessions on becoming a trusted advisor, is oftentimes we have to give people bad news to folks. So oftentimes, what we do is say, somebody asks us when we can deliver this, for example, and we go, oh, I'm swamped right now. I'm slammed. I won't be able to do this until tomorrow, right? So we start off by whining, and that's the deadline we state and all that. And yeah, it's true. We won't be able to get back to it until tomorrow. But what I remind folks to do, and this has to be reminded because it's not a natural tendency. Our natural tendency is to actually make things worse. I won't be able to do it until tomorrow, which implies and conveys a negative response to that. If we consciously think about it, and to your point, George, about being really conscious about those word choices, if instead we word it positively, rather than saying, I won't be able to do it till tomorrow, you'll have it within 24 hours. Big difference. And now they're going, wow, that's great. And so, and we can tie all of this together with the idea of understatement. So let's say that I'm your boss, you're my boss, George. So you've asked me when I get something back to you. And I could say, well, I'll try to get it back this afternoon. I'll do my best, which indicates I have no idea how competent or inept I am. I'll do my best. Rather than just say, I'll try to do it this afternoon, or I'll get it to you this afternoon, give yourself more time. So, because stuff can come up. Instead, say you'll have it within 24 hours. Well, you've given yourself more time. And now they're going, I've yet to have somebody say to me, 24 hours, that's not fast enough. Usually they're going, wow. And the place where I find this works really powerfully, you're talking with a client, you're discussing a possible project working together. And near the end of it, you say, okay, well, if we were to do this and this and this, how about I put something in writing for you and have that sent off to you? And they're going, yeah, okay, that would be really great. And if you can say to them, how about if I put something in writing and sent it to you? Would that be helpful? Yeah, that'd be great. Okay, how about I get that to you within 24 hours? And now they're going, oh yeah, wow. Now I was going to get it back to them this afternoon, but if I'd have just sent it this afternoon, no big deal. But we're setting up expectation versus exceeding expectation. And an understatement is we'll get it to you within 24 hours. We're not overstating. I'll do my best to get it to you this afternoon. It's all about trust, and what a difference it makes. It's just amazing to me how easy this stuff is when we're conscious of it. But that's why I guess Georgia put this together, this being conscious about word choices as well.
And what I'm hearing there, Jeff, what you just said about expectations. So my question is, how can people be more aware of the words they use that set up expectations that they can exceed?
By establishing expectations up front. And so, for example, let's say we have somebody who is unhappy about our service. So let's say we could give them, we're authorized to give them, I don't know, let's say 10% off or something like that. Pick a number. So one way of approaching that, the conventional approach might be, okay, tell you what, it was, it was late or it was whatever. I'll give you 10% off. Well, that may or may not impress them. But if instead we establish expectations and we say something along the lines of, and using, your wonderful phrase for this whole messaging format of podcasting, your intended message, if we say to them, we want to do the fair thing. So you tell me, what do you think would be fair? Now, by doing that, when we give a positive intention to say we want to do the fair thing, immediately you probably disarm the person because they think that they're in for a battle. But we want to do the fair thing. You tell me, what do you think would be fair? And their response might be, I don't know. I just want you to be aware of it. Nothing. Or, if you could take 5 points off of this. And at that point, they've now set the bar for what they expect. They're expecting nothing. They just want us to be aware of it, or they want us to take 5% off. But we can say, I'll tell you what, how about if I take 10% off of the cost of this? Would that be fair? Oh, heavens, that'd be great. Well, now we've exceeded that expectations because we established it at the upfront. But there's a couple things around language that I just remind folks to do when it comes to asking about what their expectation is. If we just say, well, what do you want us to do? Well, the response might be physically uncomfortable. I'll tell you what you can do with your product. You can take it and do it. So what you want us to do is not, what do you want language? We could do a whole session on that, but just to complete the thought, rather than what do you want us to do, we want to do the fair thing. What do you think would be fair? Or we could also say, what would work best at your end? And then they can tell us what their expectation is so that we can now exceed that expectation. And the wonderful thing about exceeding expectations is that you take a relationship where in most cases in business, when there's a problem, maybe we'll continue despite the problem. But I believe that we should do business because of the problem. So a lot of times we're doing business with people who provide great services, products, you deliver on time. I mean, if you're listening to this podcast, you are probably a professional, you care. So you're consistently delivering. And so the problem is that when you deliver consistently, in a lot of times we're like wallpaper. People don't notice us. It was on time. Yeah, it was expected. And not expectations, but they got a lot of other priorities in their lives. When they notice us is when there's a problem. And when there's a problem, now we have their attention. And when that happens, if you can not only fix the problem, but fix the relationship by reestablishing trust, and by doing that, we don't just resolve the problem like any ethical organization would do. We also give them something for the hassle. And that's what most organizations don't do. And that's when now they go, oh, wow, you exceeded my expectations.
Jeff, is it fair to say that a problem in customer service could be viewed as an opportunity to increase trust with clients?
Absolutely. I think most of the time, it's one of the easiest ways to create trust. And one of the reasons is that, a lot of times people will take our service for granted. We provide good service. If you're viewing this podcast, you're probably a high-performing professional who cares about professional development. You probably deliver on your promises. Chances are you have good reputation. Now, the problem with that is that oftentimes good service is what I call wallpaper. People don't really notice it. They're focused on their own priorities. You deliver on time. They're not really noticing our services. It's when there's a problem that now we've got their attention and they're testing us. And in those occasions where we don't just fix the problem, but we also give them something for the hassle. I mean, it must have taken them time to bring it to your attention, maybe cost them money to bring it, return something to you, certainly loss of peace of mind. Maybe embarrassment. So all of these, if we give them something to address that by determining exactly what we're talking about in terms of what their expectations are, when we exceed it, now they know that even in the long term, if things have gone sideways, that they start to see you now as a trusted partner in their business, that you are the supplier that can be relied upon to come through consistently. And that goes so far that oftentimes we find with our clients, it's how they responded to a problem that makes their clients more loyal as opposed to the reverse. So it's a wonderful opportunity.
Jeff, listeners and viewers have probably figured out by now that you've spent a lot of time and effort studying the words and phrases that customer service people use, the ones that work and the ones that don't work. I believe you've compiled a list of 15 phrases that pay. For those who are interested in getting a copy of that, how do they do that?
Sure. I do have, 15 ways of recovering trust. I actually have 50 phrases that pay on our website, but the one they can get right away is 15 phrases to recover trust when things go wrong. And they can get that at jeffmowatt.com. You'll see on the sidebar and our tips that when they sign up for tips, and they can unsubscribe at any point. And we don't share or sell your names to anybody else. But when they do that, they're going to receive those phrases to get. And then there's another document that I have, a little training tool. It's called 50. That's 50 phrases that pay. And what I do is, and when I say 50 phrases that pay, it's not 50 shades of gray. It is not that exciting.
Different story.
Yeah, sorry about that. But I take conventional phrases that we use on the telephone and selling and service scenarios and when things go wrong. And then I give you a replacement phrase that will probably give you more impact. So for example, let's do this, let's have some fun with this right now. And if we had listeners calling in, we'd ask them to pick a number between 1 and 50, but I'll ask you, George, pick a number between 1 and 50, please.
13, lucky 13.
13, okay. Okay, and number 13, and usually I'm giving alternative terms and phrases, but in this time I'm not. But the number 13 is, in most cases, avoid using the term sir or ma'am. I know that some folks think, oh no, that's I'm being polite, and certainly I lived in Dallas for a while, and there's sort of the yes or no sir, and I understand cultural differences. However, when I ask audiences, how do you feel when somebody who as a customer you're doing business with addresses you as sir or ma'am? Instantly, I'll get people saying old. So my point is, if we're going to offend even anyone inadvertently, why use it? Instead, why not just use their name? Typically we have it. And one of the fastest ways of doing that, and actually, okay, you're starting a whole conversation here, George, but one of the things that I'd encourage folks to do more often, just in terms of getting the person's names, is of course, introducing yourself. However, interestingly, what we typically do is when we introduce ourselves, we say, hi, I'm Jeff. And that's fine, it's fairly conventional. But what we find is that you're going to get a better response by saying, hi, I'm Jeff Mowatt. Now, of course, you would use your own name, George Torek, on that.
Okay, I'm not Jeff Mowatt.
All right. And the reason for using our first and last name is first of all, this has got nothing to do with etiquette. And people will forget our last names. That's irrelevant. But what's important is when you give your last name, it does two things for us. It shows that we are important enough that you should know who I am. So it helps to build status. And we want to build status as their equals, not above the customer, not below them, not below them. I think it's a big mistake to be too differential to customers, which is why another reason why sir and ma'am isn't a good way to start things. So we don't want to be below them. When you give your first and last name, it shows that you're important enough to be at their level. And secondly, I am comfortable being held accountable. If you have a question, you should ask for me, which is why I am volunteering my last name. And all that happens just by introducing yourself with first and last name and avoiding things like using sir and ma'am. And we got all that from one little tip out of 50 there. So good choice, number 13, I guess. And that was random, by the way. We didn't pre-plan that. So.
And for those who'd like to get a copy of that and get registered for Jeff's tips, the website is, as he mentioned, Jeff Mowatt, and that is spelled JEFF MOWATT.com. So double F and double T and Jeff and Mowatt.com to get those tips. And for those of you who are interested in learning more about how Jeff might help your customer service team, help them differentiate themselves so that your service stands out and price becomes less relevant, they can also get a hold of Jeff at the website, jeffmowatt.com. Jeff, in time to wrap up, and if there's one piece of advice that you could give to customer service providers out there, especially in this time of the COVID pandemic, what would that one piece of advice be to help build and maintain trust?
Well, first of all, George, it sounds like you've been really paying attention. I appreciate that. Secondly, I just gave you the tip. The two most powerful words that I think anyone can use in connecting with other people are the words sounds like. Now, in this case, I use the example, sounds like you were paying attention, but where we're disconnected with people and we are isolated, we're not looking to be sold to or persuaded. We are looking to be listened to. And so I know that most of the listeners of this podcast are probably really strong listeners. I mean, heavens, you got an interest in continued learning. So good for you for doing that. We're just not always seen as being strong listeners. So whether it's at work with a customer, with a supervisor, a subordinate, or at home with your sweetheart or a family member, if when they're sharing their information, before we react, respond, solve problems, if instead we can start off with sounds like. And when we do that, those words are so magical because it forces us to paraphrase our understanding of their needs. And again, the more we show that we understand their needs, the more receptive they are to our expertise. So the two strongest words, I share this in my seminars. If you don't take anything else away, use the word sounds like when you were listening to folks, and they will respond more powerfully, be more attracted to what you have to share with your intended message.
Sounds like a powerful message there. My guest today is Jeff Mowatt. Remember this from Jeff: friends compare and overshare. Advisors ask and stay on task.
Sounds like you're paying attention, George.
If you like what you heard, remember to like, comment, and share this podcast. Come back every week for more practical insights to help you deliver your intended message. I'm your host, George Torok.